Good evening. So it's Tuesday night. It's about 9 o'clock at night. And I'm in my garage here, having got back from work and had to do some work on the trailer and trying to get some stuff ready. LBJ, Little Brown Jug, is about 5 days away. It's next Sunday. And I was thinking about that, and I'm trying to get ready to go to that. And so somebody had asked me in one of the comments about, what kind of tips do you have, or what kind of, advice can you give? Now, first of all and foremost, anybody who knows my videos, I'm an idiot. I don't know how to ride a dirt bike half the time. Lucky to still be alive. So whatever I say is all with a grain of salt. But I thought it was interesting, and I want to comment on it, right? Because how I learned it was through buddies, was through Chris McGuckin, and showing me the ropes, and then asking questions and doing things like that. So what I thought today I'd share with you real quick, just a real fast video, is my top 5 tips for beginners when it comes to doing an enduro. And for LBJ, Little Brown Jug is an out-of-state enduro for me and us, our group, so we have to drive out of state to do it. So I'm going to start with my number one thing for Little Brown Jug, because it takes place on Labor Day weekend, is hydration. It's up in Union, South Carolina, and it will be hot, as it has been for the last 3 years. I've done that race for the last 3 years. It is hot in Florida. We went mountain biking this past weekend, and you cannot move without just buckets of sweat. So enduros obviously are long races, and they can be pretty taxing. Even when you're a slow guy like me, it still just takes all your energy. So hydration is the key. So a couple things on hydration. One, start now, a week early. Like, drink a bunch of water every day. I mean, I'm not talking about drink 2 gallons of water a day. No, just drink 5-6 glasses of water a day. Make sure that by race day you're hydrated. Now, I'm a guy who likes beer. Had an opportunity to drink a beer last night at dinner, and I skipped it because I'm like, you know what? I just got to lay off. I've got to be ready for this race. So, and then I know what'll happen when we get up there the night before. We're going to go to dinner as a group, and we're like, oh, I'll have a beer. Maybe I'll have one then, but can't have too many because it will dehydrate you. But if you're prepping yourself and you're drinking water up until the time, you should be good. Number one, I have been there where I have been exhausted, and it's terrible, and you feel terrible, and you can't get enough water because you started too late. So do that. Now, a couple things on hydration, you'll see. In fact, one of the very interesting things I saw at Little Brown Jug was a guy selling pickle juice, like jars of pickle juice, homemade pickles and his pickle juice. And so that interested me. I'm like, oh, really? What's that all about? Oh, it prevents cramps, they say, So I went a little Googling down the road, and I like to find out things, find the source. So I went to the medical papers, the research papers, and said, is pickle juice real? Does it really prevent dehydration? Does it help with cramps? So I read 4 or 5 papers. You know what? I'll link them in the description so you can read them too. And the answer to that is no, it does not. It doesn't prevent people from still using it, because a lot of pro athletes, in fact, there's like 20% of them, are using it to prevent cramps after their hard endurance whatevers they do. Okay, good for you. But the science says, you know what? It doesn't really work. But if it works for you, then it works for you, and I don't blame it. But pickle juice is one of those things. But another more relevant question is, people ask, what do you put in your Camelback, your water hydration pack? What are you drinking along the race? When I first started racing enduros, I was dumping Gatorade in there, and it tastes good. The problem is it's full of sugar, and even the Gatorade Zeros, although they're not full of sugar, it's that sweet response that you have, and you get kind of like what I call, I don't know whether it's true or not, whether it's an insulin spike. And so you get that, you feel good for a part of the race, but then you crash, meaning, mentally and not physically crash, but your body just says, oh, I'm exhausted now. And you can't get enough of that sugar back in your body. So I stopped doing that and just said, okay, just water for a while. Water was working good. And then I moved on to a thing called LMNT, right? So LMNT. It's it's an electrolyte pack. It's salty. It's mainly salt and magnesium. And I put that in there. And to be honest, it's expensive, first of all. It tastes good. I get the citrus flavor, but it doesn't make a difference, right? It's not like, oh, I feel so much refreshed and I'm going to keep on going. No, I feel the exact same way, whether it was water or whether it was that element stuff. And/or whether you're putting in there, I mean, a lot of guys put these electrolyte packs in their water. If it makes you feel good, ride with it. For me, I still think it's water. I don't think any changes that. And the studies kind of bear out that Water's the game. But anyway, so number one tip, first one tip, hydrate, start now, start early before you get going. You go up there. Number two is bike maintenance. Now, if you don't do bike maintenance, this happens. No brakes. All right, go ahead. No brakes. As you can see, you got to check everything over in your bike. In that specific example I just gave you, that was LBJ, Little Brown Jug. I forget what row we were on. But we were all excited. And I had done, changed tires, changed something or other, and I never tested my rear brakes. From the time we left this house, drove the 9 hours to get there, unloaded the bikes, rode the bike to the starting line, never hit the rear brake. Never had to, because when you're in the pit, you don't have to, you're not jamming on the brakes. My dumbass never tested the bike, assumed it was good, and took off and ran smack dab into a tree with no brakes whatsoever. So number two tip to get ready for any race is check your bike over. And that's every nut and bolt. That's check your brakes, check your handlebars, check all the nuts and bolts on there. I have come back with axle nuts loose. I have come back with, my bark busters are always banged up and they get loose, and check everything. Check your bearings, check your bushings. It doesn't take very long to do that and make sure everything's there. Check your oil on the bike, make sure it's a fresh set. You're gonna be on that bike for a good 5 hours, revving it out, 4 or 5 hours. Make sure you got some fresh oil in there, good tires, check your spokes. Good once over in the bike doesn't hurt. And I even do this now after, I throw the bike in the back of the truck and get all the way up there. Before I even ride, I do it again because it's been bouncing around in the back of the truck for so long. So I'm gonna do that tonight on this one, make sure everything's good to go and ready to roll, come loading up, and we'll leave on Saturday. So that's tip number 2. Check your bike over. As a beginner, make sure everything is good to go. You don't have to be a mechanic to do that. You can just get a wrench out and test things. Number 3 for me, as you guys may know, watching my videos, is I happen to crash a lot, Oh, fuck. Didn't see that coming. Oh, no. So my number 3 big time tip is you should, if you're a beginner and you're not really confident on the bike and you're not the best rider in the world, make sure you have some really good protective gear. The guys that we ride with, our team, our fantastic team, there's a couple of guys that this past year, have injured themselves quite severely, right? And it doesn't mean that their gear would have saved them. Maybe it would have, maybe it wouldn't. We had 2 guys with broken ribs. And I've had a crash once where I've had some pretty bruised up ribs. But so I'll share with you the gear that I wear. It's over the top, if you want to say that. It's hot, but I don't feel confident anymore riding without it. And I was out this weekend cutting trail, or not last weekend, cutting trail with Kroom, and I forego my chest protector because I just figured we'd be crawling around there. But man, it's an uneasy feeling without it. So the one that I wear is Liat. So this is the front of it, and this is the back of it, right? And it wraps around the ribs. So I think this is called, and it incorporates a neck brace, right? So you get this thing, it snaps in like this. Got shoulder pads, you got the neck brace, you got the wraparound ribs, this big old cage. And it's not the lightest thing in the world, but when I hit the ground, as you've seen, I hit the ground a lot, or I hit a tree, that thing's been protecting me pretty good. This is actually my second one of the same version. I think it's like the 5.5 from Liat. I hope they don't discontinue it because I love it, and it's the second one. I've actually, not so much, I wore out the other one in about a year and a half wearing it. So good protection around your rib cage and all that, because you will fall, you will take handlebars to the chest and to the ribs. It's inevitable. You will bang your shoulders on trees. Those of us who aren't very good getting through the trees, you bang your shoulders on trees. Anyway, next thing, boots. A good set of boots. So I wear the CDs. Now these are CD something, some Crossfire 3s, right? I had the Crossfire 2s, I wore them out. It took me about 3 years to wear those out. And these are less than a year old, and they're gonna last me at least 3 years, because I am just not that good of a, I'm not on the peg so much, riding that much, that I'll wear these things out. It's a couple of my buddies, they wear their boots You know, if you ever watch Cody race, that kid wears their boots like crazy. He's active on the bike. When I get on there, I'm kind of like, I'm pretty much in the same spot. But I love these CDs. They're comfortable. I've had the Garnets before. Did not like them. I felt like they were too bulky. These are super protective. They're on the higher end, right? So this is the key. With boots, you know, you're in it for like $100 or you're in it for $500. You know, I think I got these a pretty good deal on sale around the 300 range, 350 maybe on that. It's expensive, but I also don't want to have broken foot, and I've banged my feet on stumps, have taken my feet right off the pegs before. I put my leg out, you know, in the wrong place because I don't know what I'm doing, and it gets all banged up. Never had a problem with the CDs. I like the CDs. I recommend them. I do not recommend cheap boots. I just don't. I think it's unsafe, and I think you'd pay the price. You'd rather pay money up front and then instead pay the doctor bill. Next is a helmet. Of course, you got to have a helmet. Everybody should have a helmet. I've talked about helmets before. I talked about the Fly helmet distinctly. Any helmet you want, I think, is fine. My number one key for helmets is light. Is I want the lightest possible. That's probably because I'm a huge pussy and I get tired easy, and so I don't want my neck getting hurt. I remember I have one laying around up here somewhere. One of my first ones. It was a KTM Bell helmet, like the Moto 9 or something. The thing weighs a ton. Comparatively to something like this is the Leat 9.5. Yeah, 9.5 Leat, and it's really light. I think it's the second lightest in the industry. And it's still very protective. I have already smacked my face in the ground a few times, you know, with this thing, and it's still looking good. So a good quality helmet, lightweight, I like the best, so I'm not suffering any, not injury so much as fatigue when I'm riding. Goggles, I run the Leat goggles. I do that probably because they came free with the Leat helmet when I bought it, and I actually like them a lot. I really like their lenses that are easy to replace because I'm pretty terrible at putting my goggles away and I get them all scratched up. I also really, really like the Leat gloves. If you've ever seen those, everybody's gonna wear gloves. I don't see a lot of guys riding without. Once in a while you'll see a guy without gloves, just preference. I like these Leat gloves because of this pad, or the material they use for the hands. It's kind of like a suede. Really like it. It's different than the others. It's got this little rubber thing on the outside. Who really cares about that? But these have held up really well. This suede, once it gets wet, it's kind of form-fitting, but not slippery, if that makes sense. So I like the Leat gloves a lot. I have a lot of Leat gear. I think it's just happenstance that happens. All right, next. So, okay, gear. Good gear. We talked about hydration. We talked about bike maintenance. So next couple of tips to round out the top 5 here, or round out top 4. Number 4 is, for the new guys, get there early, okay? Getting there early means getting there actually the night before, at least the night before, because you got to pick up your packet, and inside your packet is going to be your number, of course. You want to put that on there, and if they're using a route sheet that you stick on the front fender, or they're electronic, one of the two, to make sure your transponder is good. You want to get all that stuff out of the way, because it's kind of nerve-wracking the day of the race when you're new. You don't really know what to do, when to be, where the start is. People are great. I love the people at the races, but those old hats that have been there for a long time just assume you know what you're doing. And I can tell you, I didn't know what I was doing. So get there early. If you get there the night before, like we're going to get there on a Saturday night, we'll get in there in the late afternoon. The club is always going to be open the night before for registration because they want to make it easier on people to get their packets the night before instead of jamming everything in the morning of, right? The people that are putting on the race, those volunteers, it's hectic for them in the morning when people show up and they want to get their packet and get ready to race. So get there the night before. Get there early. Because you want to look at the route sheet. I had no clue on how to read a route sheet when I got it for the very first time. My very first Enduro was follow the guy in front of me, period. If I could even find somebody in front of me, right? I was out there, I actually was on the track for a long time by myself. That's how slow I am. And you're kind of going, well, am I going the right way? And how much longer is this? So get there early. That is a big piece of it. So you can ask questions and you can feel comfortable come the morning of the race that you know exactly where to be and where the gas stops will be, where lunch will be, or when lunch will be. And I'll show when we get out there a little video of what we do with that route sheet, and we take that and we tape it onto our bike so we kind of know how long each test is going to be when we finish each one. I'll do that a little bit later or I'll do that for the LBJ video, not for this video. All right, that was number 4. Recap. Hydrate. Maintenance. good gear, get there early, and the last tip is don't quit. I know that seems weird to say, but it's very easy to do when you're a beginner and you're out there on test 5 or test 6. So you're looking at, you've been out there for 50 plus miles. You're probably out there by yourself a lot, and you want to quit. My very first Enduro that I did was LBJ, Little Brown Jug, and I quit on the last section. I literally quit about 200 yards from the finish. I had no idea where it was at. I ended up seeing the road, and I said, I'm out, and I got on the road, and I followed the road back, and I realized, wait a minute, I was almost done. I wish I had finished. That ate at me for a long time. It ate at me on the drive home. It ate at me like, why did I do that? Why didn't I just finish? I hadn't houred out, which was very important. And so houring out, what that means is you are an hour later than when you're supposed to be there. That's supposed to be there. You start test 1. There's all this math that's involved that they've done prior, and depending on where you're at, what Enduro you're doing, it's an average of 30 miles an hour, then the fastest guy would be here at this time. Whatever, we don't do that anymore in today's day and age. It's just about get to the test. But if it takes you more than an hour than it would take the fastest guy to get there, you're gonna be pretty much eliminated, right? Honestly, I've rarely ever seen anybody hour out in the Enduro series that we've been doing, which is the Southeast United States. But I guess it's possible. So on that is, you don't want to quit, but you also don't want to dilly-dally, right? So I got caught doing this. I had finished a test, and I knew my buddy was a couple rows behind me, so I said, okay, I'll wait for him. And I hung out there and I waited for him to show up, and it took him a little bit longer than I expected. So we were together at the transfer from one test to the other. Well, the 5 minutes I waited on him at that transfer, while we rode together to the next spot, it was already time for my row to go. We didn't have enough time, right? So there was no break, and you gotta have breaks, because again, you're gonna get tired, you're gonna do that. So it's don't quit, but also don't dilly-dally at all. When you get done with the test, get on the transfer and get to the next section so that you can see how much time you actually have before you have to get going again for the next test. That'll make sense when you're going at the Enduros. Because it's better for you to know, I've got 5 minutes or I've got 3 minutes, let me get my backpack off, let me get some juice, let me get something to eat, let me take my helmet off, right? And that's something that I try to do a lot is, my bald ass head. So I like to get my helmet off in the heat to let that heat get out. Otherwise I'm just baking and my helmet is completely sweated out. I can only do that if I have enough time between the tests, so I can't be screwing around wasting time. So, quick 5 beginner tips on how to do your first Enduro. LBJ is coming up this weekend. I hope to see everybody up there. If you see me in our group and trailers, please come by and talk to us. We're very friendly guys. We like to talk to people. We are called the Young and the Rest of Us, and we're having a blast, and it's just a lot of fun. So, good luck. See you up there, and I'll post an LBJ video as soon as we get back from the race. See ya.